Hi and welcome to the Journal of a Marketing Agency.
Listen in as we chat about challenges we faced,
Insights into the latest marketing topics,
and thoughts on productivity and growth.
Start to talk about the importance of story. So where do you see the importance of story? Because it's critical in all forms of marketing, but people are often forgotten and people don't realise they're buying things based on story.
Oh yeah, I think I would say 90+% of purchases are made because of some story, big or small. Something as little as a pack of screws that you're purchasing at a DIY store is for some sort of project to fix something that's going to make your life at home better because it's been broken for so long, or it's going to go towards building some kind of family unit in the garden that you can gather round. There's some story, there's some level of story there from a customer's point of view.
So that's the two things to define. So you mean that's the story that the customer's having in their own journey. How do you think the brand taps into that? It's important for them to make sure that they're clear what the customers are doing with their products, so they can tell that story to them.
Yeah. I guess we've started backwards, haven't we? Because we talk about storytelling and we talk about a brand storytelling, and there's multiple layers of that, isn't there? There's the backstory, there's the story of the development of the product, the story that the business is building as they grow. But actually, there's a story at a customer level as well that brands can tap into. You know, that the brands can what is your existence as a business? You're here to help your customers achieve something. You're here to provide a solution to customers.
Yeah, every product solves a problem that a customer has.
Yeah, in some way.
And it doesn't have to be a physical problem. It could be an aesthetic. You know, they want to look nicer, so therefore here is a product that makes you look nicer. And it's tapping into the psyche of your customer to know that what problem do you solve for the customer? Why are they come to you? And then you can turn that into the story, if you like. If you're manufacturing a story, you can then create said story. Like you said, even if it's a pack of screws, it's to solve, some of the best storytellers are, say, people like paint, as you know, a Dulux ad. Then they could just say, here's our paint. But no, they talk about the nursery that's being painted, or the moving home, or, your child's going off to university, so we're repainting their room now that they're gone. They're not just saying, here's our paint, it costs this, and it's a really nice colour. Yeah. They are kind of the masters, if you like, in such a commodity product at storytelling.
That's a great example, isn't it? Because paint's paint, and actually a particular colour of paint will be for a number of reasons. But Dulux and brands like that will tap into a story around that paint and what it allows the customer to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately, without a story, you are just a commodity product. Because you can buy paint from other cheaper brands, but there's a reason people go to Dulux, and it's not necessarily based on the quality of the paint or the price of the paint. It's because of the way that paint taps in to the story that they are feeling. And it's as simple as that. If your product A and product B look the same colour, and we're going to stay with paint for the minute, look the same colour, cost the same, which one do you choose? The one that evokes that emotion based on the story that it's told you. And that's true of so many products. Unless you've got something unique, and there aren't many unique products left in the world, that if you've got something that's so unique, you can just be, our product does this and it's great. But anywhere else, story is critical.
I mean, you mentioned positioning and price there as well, and again, you look at something like Dulux. We're really going with this paint theme.
I've only just painted this place, so it must be in my mind.
That's right. But the Dulux is a premium paint, or it's a higher end paint. There's a lot of cheaper paints out there, and again, why is that? Well, again, there's going to be some level of quality in there,
of course.
But a big part of commanding that higher price and being present in those retailers is that story.
Of course.
is the way that they tell stories and the way that they evoke emotions and make people want to pay more for that paint.
Yeah. I mean, it's marketing 101, really, your story. Because if you don't have that, you can't build on it from any perspective. You can't build, your social channel should be retelling your story everywhere. All the, your website, your PR, everything, the way your customers, your staff work within your business should be connected to this. They should feel there were people. There's a reason people want, again, we'll stay with paint because we were there. People might want to work for Dulux more than unknown trade paint brand because they want to be a part of that story. And it's critical. I think sometimes it's missed by people. Certainly, people feel sometimes that their product doesn't have a story or it's not worthy of a story, but everything has.
Yeah.
I mean, I back in the day, I used to work for, it was a paving company, Bradstone, garden paving. And at the time, I remember thinking the marketing was very much, it was based on the quality of the product and the colours, and it was all very good. But then I pivoted that and actually said, well, our marketing went from the product to actually the new car parked on that drive that had been paved, because actually the story we were telling was how proud this person was of their home and the car they park in. That's why they wanted a nice drive, not because of its colour and its price point. And we had a whole range of things. We had, But again, that's really important for people to understand. It's what emotion do you want your customers to feel when they see your brand? And you can manufacture a story. I think sometimes I think, my product hasn't got a story. Well, lots of products don't. It's up to you to decide what you want the story to be. I think that's quite critical.
Yeah, because again, like you said, if even if you've not got a story as a company, like a backstory, or an emotive story or some kind of good core story, which we'll come on to. Again, it's. I think there's a big opportunity to unlock that customer story, by evoking those emotions. Like you say, your product it solves a problem.
I always think the test for a brand and its story is, can you tell your brand story within your Instagram bio? I don't know if I've mentioned this before in the last podcast, maybe I didn't. But yeah, you've got so many characters. You need to be able to very clearly articulate what your product and brand is in, I'm not sure how many characters is the Instagram bio. It's not many.
I can't remember now. But it's not a lot, no.
So a great example is, I don't know if people know Gandhi's, the brand. It's a travel brand. It used to be purely flip-flops, but then it became sort of this bigger travel-centric brand. If you go onto their Instagram, it might have changed. It's been a while since I've looked. But their motto is orphans for orphans. And you kind of think, okay. But the founders were orphaned during the tsunami it was in Thailand. Their brand model is they give a percentage of the sales to build orphanages. So orphans for orphans. You kind of, okay, I think now anyone that's listening to this has an idea of what Gandhi's is about. They may not know the products, but you've got a feeling for this brand now. This is something that clearly it comes from a tragic but good place, and what they're trying to do is good. And another example is completely different end of the scale. There's a guy called Danny Buck that I watched a lot of stuff on because he's a big sort of direct-to-consumer marketeer, well, business owner, but marketing. And it was actually him that spoke to me. I worked with him for a time, and I don't know. Well, I can swear if I like. One of his brands is just about great sunglasses without the BS, without the bullshit, and that's it. Okay. So and he said he's removing the bullshit. Again, it comes down to prices. So this was about, you can have a great pair of sunglasses, but you don't need to pay massive premium because we're not going to put it in over-packaged things. We're not going to do loads of the nonsense that comes with the product to keep the price down. And you knew quite simple. I think their chain brand, the crafted one, it's a good quality chains without the green necks. Because I don't wear chains, but if you wear a lot of chains, if you wear something that isn't solid gold, as an example, notorious one of the downsides is the metal starts to go green if you wear it in the shower. So it's really simple. People know I can wear that now. Wear it day and out. It's not going to cost me a fortune. I'm not going to get that green sort of look on. So I now understand all these brands in a blink of an eye, and think people, if you have to explain who you are and what you do, and you can't do it in either the elevator pitch style, in the 10 seconds in an elevator or in a sentence, people aren't going to get it either, because your attention span, as you know, as a customer, is really low.
But what you've touched on the Gandhi's thing, see, that's a different take on it again, isn't it? Because, in a way, because say we go back to the paints and the screws and those kind of things, and they're, it's about the customer have a challenge, they have some kind of personal story going on that the brand is then tapping into.
Yeah.
What Gandhi's is doing there, they're not focusing on that. They're not saying, okay, the flip-flops is because you're going to go on holiday and you're going to have this great holiday and painting pictures of these beautiful holidays. I'm sure they do that at some level.
Yeah, they do.
But there's a different story there. There's a like a curveball, which is like a good feeling, a good cause.
Yeah, some brands have a genuine backstory as to their why.
Yeah.
When I suppose Tom's is another brilliant example of that. Again, this giving model, it's really simple. It was one for one. You buy a pair of shoes, we'll give a pair of shoes to someone who doesn't have shoes. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
If I'm in the space for a pair of shoes and I like their style of shoes, and actually I would like to have a warm, fuzzy feeling knowing when I get my shoes that I know someone else's. It's classic. It's using authenticity. There's, like we say, you can create a story for your brand if it has nothing. But if it does have something authentic at the beginning, and often there's a person attached to that story, a founder most often, then you need to leverage that. Certainly in the earlier days. You were saying about Gandhi's, it wasn't actually specifically involved because of this podcast, but I was actually looking at them a couple of days ago, and I had to dig a bit deeper to find the orphan story now, because they're 10 years old as a business. That was clearly their only why at the beginning, but now it is a huge part of what they are. They still share all the content about the orphanage they're building and where they are, because they understand that's a huge part of their brand. But they're now leaning more to, our product is built for a traveller, for someone who's going on holiday, travelling. So they're dialing down slightly their why and creating a story now based on the perceived needs of their customers, as opposed to creating a product that people would buy, maybe partly because of their backstory. Now they're developing products that taps into that's in the story that their customers are having.
So the weight of those two sides of it, that backstory versus that live story, customer story, what do you think do you think there's a percentage split there that Gandhi's are using, or what?
I think it's very much, it can tell you where you are in your journey as a business. I think you need, at the very beginning, you get lots of goodwill on the base. Certainly, theirs is quite extreme. It's born out of real tragedy. But there's an element of the only thing that was different between their flip-flops and another flip-flop brand. I can't think of, what was it? I can't think of what's the big one? Havaianas, there you go. The only difference into their products was their story, probably at the very beginning. So they had to lean on, not had to, but it's right to, they lent on the story as the goodness that they do as an organisation. But now they're developing, they're a 10-year-old business. I'm sure they've got product designers and product managers and all these things, and they're now developing products specifically for the needs of a customer, as opposed to having a Me Too product that needed a story to help it versus their competitors. Now they probably, they create probably some of the best bags for people travelling around the world, so they can afford to be more about the bag than the why, the backstory, and all those sort of good things. I think when you're early into a market, your product hasn't got a big differentiator. That's when the personal story is more important. And I don't think they'll ever go away from, because but they are a very extreme example. Obviously they lost their parents during the tsunami. They had to get them and their siblings across Thailand back to the UK. It's awful. They've got a book. I can't think what it's called now. But at Bowman's, look them up. It's an incredible brand story. But they're probably right. And I think sometimes when a brand is launched based on something tragic or something difficult, it's probably quite comforting for the people behind the brand to it not be about that always. Because you think about if you're reliving, if your why is something awful that happened to you, to relive that day in, day out, and that's all people want to talk about in your brand, it must be lovely to get to the point where your products stand on their own right, regardless of a backstory. Now it's a new story.
Well, there's probably a level of comfort and confidence that good cause that the business was set up for, Orphans for Orphans, is a given now. In the initial, I guess, in the early days, it was all about that mission to do that, to sell these products to people, to create these orphanages. Whereas now, the brand is big enough and just moving. Well, it's got momentum enough that that's just a given. Well, this is what we do as a business. Now, this now becomes our kind of policy as a business.
It's a bit like the social proof we talk about. But they have proved, because I think they have something like 6 orphanages now around the world, and you can go on their website and you can see them opening orphanages and see the good that they've done. They don't need to tell people what they're going to do. It's not what they're going to do anymore. It's what they've done and they'll continue to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was all about the life cycle of where they are in their journey. But I think, if you have something personal in your brand story, I mean, I've talked to all sorts of people when I've been setting up brands and things, and I always like to sound things, and then people say, that is your story. You know, that is, you need to, what makes you unique about that, and that's what a story is. What makes your brand unique and different to another one? And in a commodity world where you're selling something that people could make, again, going back to the sort of the P's of marketing, they could make it based on the product itself or the price, or how it's been promoted. Actually, authenticity and having something behind your brand that means more than just the product.
I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? Because you know, when we talk about storytelling, there is a level of storytelling. You can make up stories. You can make up like advertisements.
Yes.
And paint a picture of. There's an eBay advertisement at the moment, which is very well done, about a guy who buys these things on eBay and meets these different people and talking to his friends and family. And it's very quite witty and quirky. But that's just a made up story to evoke an emotion to get someone to use eBay.
Yep.
Which is fine, but again, when we talk about storytelling, I think we talk specifically about authenticity.
Yeah.
You mentioned that then.
I think, and storytelling has changed. I think where people have been very clever is that you could manufacture a story about your brand and it just be a story that's completely manufactured. But now there's an expectation, ever since probably Instagram was where it changed, and stories and things. People now people like to know the behind the scenes. And that's where you couldn't be. I've never been a fan of it. There's a drop shipping kind of model. People don't even own the product. People order products online. Then the order goes off to some manufacturer somewhere. It takes 5 weeks to arrive. It's normally based on price and blah blah blah. People don't want to be engaged with those companies as much now, and people will follow a business not to see updates of what products they've got and da da da. It's because they like the business and they want to keep that story going. And it's how you communicate with your customers in the real raw behind the scenes stuff. It could be, people want to know more about the people behind the company. And I'm not saying the founders and the directors, but the people who are packing their, it's more and more common if you're buying something online, it says, even if it's just it's a stamp on an invoice to say packed by Julie on a date, these things people expect now. Yeah. They don't expect, people want. And if they find
it makes a difference.
Yeah, and you feel a connection to the company you're buying from, and it's not just transactional. And you obviously, as a brand's perspective, your story and your why will evoke that emotion in someone that they'll come back to you time and time again. Because if they have just bought from you based on you were cheaper than the other person, well, guess what? The other person does a discount and they'll go there. If they're bought into you and what you're trying to do and why you've developed this product, and your storytelling could be just explaining to people the process behind making. We started right at the beginning about screws and things. If you've gone back to, you've made extra effort to make your screws stronger than another screw. It's not visible. Yeah. You can't see, but the process you went to designing it, and God knows, you went to see some special engineer say, can we make this screw as tight as it's going to be so the top doesn't ever thread. But if you show people the journey you went to go to a specialist in, this is a really random example, isn't it? Screw heads. But if you just put it there and you put it as a line on your website, share the journey that you went to make your screw as good a screw as it can be. Yeah, people will love that.
See, now we're getting into that in between thing now, aren't we? Where we talk obviously we talked about the customer, we talked about their stories, we talked about evoking that emotion and tapping into that.
So backstory side.
We talked about backstory. This is almost that ongoing live story, that kind of tapestry that you're weaving with the customer.
Yeah.
In terms of the live engagement, the updates from staff, the little handwritten notes, then there's the user generated content as well. Then isn't there? If a customer is engaged that much, they're weaving your story as well.
I mean, the best people for it, and it's not in my experience, and they don't do it anymore, and I can see why. There's a brand called High Smile Teeth Whitening, and they used to have a vlog every day. They employed a videographer who would literally operate in their business, and every day they would be vlogging exactly what they're doing today. It would be the staff doing workouts on the beach. It would be showing it's Karen in PR's birthday. It would show the photo shoots for the product. You'd follow the founders going to meetings and on planes. It was brilliant. It would have taken a lot of work, which is one of the reasons why they stopped. And also by giving such good insights into their business, there was a spring up of copycat brands, because they almost gave away. It was brilliant in raising their profile, and you loved the brand. But if you went into it with the wrong intentions, you could see, okay, that's how they do their marketing, and that's how they develop their products, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
There was a huge influx of copycats and lookalikes. But the fact that they now don't do anything of that sort that I can see, I still get remarketed to them, but now I just see their products. And now they are, to me, personally, I've never done teeth whitening, but I was interested by the founders and their story. But now they're just a teeth whitening company to me, whereas before I quite liked, I think it's Alex... I can't think of the guy's name. I actually reached out to them and I said how much I like their vlog and things. Alex Tomic, I can't think of the guy's name. Maybe we'll put some links if you want to check it. The stuff's not there anymore, sadly. The videos, they took them down. But I don't think I would have bought their product. But if I was ever in the space for teeth whitening, that's where I would have gone. Yeah. Because I felt like I knew the owners. Yeah. I liked them. They could see he looked after their staff. Yeah. I could see how they developed the product. I could see the science behind it. I could see the good intention behind it. Yeah. And the fact that I felt like I knew them, I would have bought things from them.
I think this is where social plays a massive part now. Because social now, and we'll cover it in another episode, talking about social and growth through social. Yeah. But there's a lot of expectation from the customer to, if they follow someone on social, they don't follow because they want to be repeatedly sold to. They follow because they are interested. Yeah, they want to know things, maybe get some insights, get some value, learn more about the business.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think people do like to understand who they're buying from now. The ethics behind people, there's all these things are so much more important because the people have got so much data and so much choice. If you can build authenticity around your brand by telling your backstory, tell your customer story for them, and equally share the ongoing, like a book. Every month should be a new chapter for your business, and tell people where you're going and where you're trying to get to, and the dream of your brand. And if you're going through a hard time, tell people, because they'll appreciate that. If you've made a mistake with a product, tell them, and that it all weaves into marketing. It's marketing 101. It's why would people want to buy your product over another one? And it's as simple as that. But what's changing, or what we'll cover in this one more, is how you can tell that story changes almost on a weekly basis, daily. Sometimes you used to be able to tell it through Facebook in a different way, less so now. There's emerging platforms like Clubhouse, which we've seen. TikTok has blown up that was kind of the lockdown platform, but how you tell your story there is very different. Yeah. So story is critical. It should be the foundation of any product or service or whatever you're selling, really. But then what will always change is how you get that story in front of people and what part of your story you tell where.
And something you mentioned before as well is entertained.
Yeah.
That people want to be entertained. Again, stories are how we live our lives. Every day, people be shocked how many stories they tell people on a daily basis about how they got into work that day, or what happened when they made their lunch, or how did you ask your son or daughter how they got on at school, and there's a whole story there. The stories every day. That's how we live our lives. But also a great life is when those stories are entertaining.
Yeah.
That's really what you want to know when you ask someone. You want to know, obviously, how did your day go? Are they well? Is everything okay? But if they come out with a great entertaining story, that's it starts up a conversation. It's something that you share on.
I think that's where we'll touch on it in future episodes, I'm sure, is how you tell your story in different places. Yeah, because you could, you wouldn't, if there was a problem with the product, you wouldn't necessarily try and be entertaining in that email to a customer. Probably you'd save that one for an email. But if it's a product that you're developing and launching, you might put a lot more effort into telling that story, and you might have a huge elaborate video behind it. I think it's, people will want to be. No one's on a social media platform like Instagram. People are there for a reason. They want to be. That's why videos of cute kittens and stuff do well, because it's entertaining. It gives a little burst of dopamine. So where you tell your story, you've got to be really thinking about what you want that story to be, on what platform and when, and who you're trying to talk to. It's all marketing is, really. In simplest terms. That's what we focus on. It's our forte is telling you brand stories, but then the hard bit, both are hard, but the harder bit that people seem to forget is how you do that. There is such a complex technical back end of all of that to put the story in front of the right people at the right times, and know what stories are resonating and when you need to change that story, and so on and so on. So it's interesting. It's something we'll follow more and more. And effectively, this podcast is us sort of telling our story.
Yeah.
If you like, inadvertently. Yeah. Because we are going to be talking about, you'll start to slowly understand who we are as people. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the kind of last thing to it is that actually it's fun. It's one of the more fun things to do, to be able to share. Yeah. Again, not only do people like hearing stories, people like telling stories.
Yeah. And I think you can tell the brands that are doing that. There's something I would always say to anyone who's looking to set up a business. If you're doing it for monetary reasons, the story you're going to tell is pretty boring, because it's how do we get bigger, how are we making more money. But if you're doing something because you love it, if I say someone sets up a bakery because they love baking, well, the stories that they're going to tell, you're going to see it in them. You're going to see the passion behind the products they're making, the way they talk about them. If you're in your business and it's up, and everyone's different, but I find it when I'm working, I don't feel like I'm working. So therefore, telling people what I've done today is easy. If it felt like a grind and every day, oh God, that was a slog, it's not going to be a very fun story for people to watch either.
Well, it wouldn't be entertaining either.
No, it wouldn't be. It'd be awful watching this this guy trudging through life trying to make more and more money. Some people are hugely fueled by money, and that's why ultimately people have businesses. But I think if you can have a realness and authenticity, and you're clearly passionate about your product, that rubs off on customers, and that's where you can tell a fake story. And if that, if you are fueled purely on the financial growth of a business, which a lot of people could be, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, that's where the importance of finding people within your organisation that do have that real passion.
I think there's the challenge is generally for bigger brands. Smaller startups, entrepreneurs. Yeah, they again, they'll have a story that's very, very current, very, they're living it as they're, scraping through, trying to grow, all those kind of things.
Yeah, packing orders and you can be really hands-on with it, can't you?
But the big brands, there's that level of, gets choked up where things don't want to be shared so much. There's the risks, like you talked about with the teeth whitening company,
giving away too much.
Obviously it's such a bigger corporation. There's so much content out there on social feeds from brands that is just mundane stuff.
Yeah, and there's a few people that do it so well. And for me, it's Elon Musk and Tesla. And well, not just Tesla, but SpaceX. That you can follow the journey of every rocket being made, the people, and they'll share with you the rockets that explode on landing. Because then you think, oh God, why would you share that? Because you feel a part of their story.
Yeah.
When SpaceX lands on Mars, so many people have been on the journey with them the whole way.
Yeah.
And it's about, and you know, Elon Musk will speak so openly about his past and his future and where he stands on things. Apple is the other one. But you know, there's a reason why the certain people in the business, Steve Jobs was Apple, obviously, but now that's changed. But the right people stand up and talk, and they share, and there's if some organisations are so closed, it is a product on a shelf, and you go on their website, you can't really find out what they stand for, who the people are, what their plans are for the future, where they came from, and you'd gravitate towards brands that will entertain you and tell you stories.
But it's also a challenge of scale as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on The Apprentice years ago, there was a bakery business. One of the candidates had a bakery business, and her dad did all the baking, and it was all artisan stuff. And she was pitching that as her business to Lord Sugar.
Yeah.
But actually, the concern there was, well, hang on, you want to get massive, you want to grow, you want to open up loads of other bakeries, but they're not all going to have your dad in it.
Yeah.
And he's part of it. People come in and it's all hand baked by this guy, you know. And so that was her challenge. This candidate's challenge was to convince them to say, no, actually, I can try and replicate that story and that authenticity across all these different.
I think the key with I remember her. It was a Welsh girl, I think.
I think
she won, didn't she? Or she certainly got funding.
Maybe.
I think it's like Gooey Really Rich, I think was the brand. It's like really rich cakes and things. And I think I actually saw something on her the other day. She's opening up a new bakery somewhere. But I think remember with her is that it was actually sharing the story from kitchen table to corporate, and that was the story that she has. How she sort of.
So it was the backstory, not the live story.
Exactly. So she was then able to share the story from, making cakes on a kitchen to having 15 bakeries in North Wales. By sharing the journey with her customers, they could still appreciate where she come from, and they appreciated the effort and work that gone to get where she's going.
You wonder
if
how
she'd just
long
gone from nothing to got loads of bakeries.
Yeah,
people might be no.
Yeah, you wonder again how long and how big do you need to grow, or how far do you need to go before you do start to change that, before that fizzles out and it becomes the current story or customer focus. You know, like you were talking about Gandhi's the switch from backstory.
I think it's just be authentic all of the time, and you can't. There's not a point in time where it changes. You just do what's right for you this week, and that's why things like podcasts and vlogs and Instagram stories, you can't manufacture those. You can't. You sort of can, but if you're putting out content all of the time, people that have known you from the beginning will appreciate being on the journey. People that discover you in year 15 have the ability to go back and see where you came from.
Yeah.
I've got lost in YouTube, by finding something I liked, a brand I liked, or people within a brand that I liked. They might have 60 videos to go back 10 years, and it's fascinating going back, and I then appreciate them more now of where they are based on where they came from.
Yeah.
So this story is fascinating. It's the most important thing for any product, really.
Yeah.
And then it's how you package that up and put it in front of people.
Yeah.
In really crude, brutal sales terms, how you package your story and how you put it in front of people.
Yeah.
But a product will never survive on story alone, which is key with all of these products. None of these things could just survive because it had a good story. If your product's rubbish, or it's too expensive, or there's no need for it from the customer.
Yeah. We always say to some of our clients that if they've got a good product, then it just makes our life a lot easier.
Wrapping a story around a good product that there's a need for is brilliant.
Yeah.
But equally, we've got some clients that are one of many brands in that space, and building a story that elevates them. If you can have a good story, you can charge more for your product, in simplest terms, and we've known that from what we've been doing this week. If you can build something around it, if you are just a commodity, you're competing on price alone, your margins are going to get eaten.
Yeah.
But if you can build it, it's you can protect profit by having a good story. We're going round and round a bit now, but I think in summary, story is critical. Where you are in your life cycle of your brand and your product depends on what that story is. But ultimately, it's about authenticity, telling the story from day one, keep telling it, and understanding where to put the story.
And there are those different types,
Yeah.
you know, and they should all blend into one and be part of a bigger picture. But
like an
I say,
ecosystem, isn't it?
we talked about that backstory. We've talked about the kind of live story that you're kind of growing with your customers at the moment, maybe through social, how behind the scenes kind of information, how the product's been manufactured, those kind of things, and engagement with the customer. And then there's obviously that customer focused in a more advertising sense, that customer focused story.
Yes.
This is a tapping into, this is a story the customer's telling themselves about what they can achieve if they have these running shoes or if they have this drink or those kind of things.
There you go. I think that's a good place to get to on story, but it's something we're going to touch on more and more. And as we go forward, I think it's quite important that we share the stories of brands that we're working with as and when we can. Obviously, there's just so people can see how we are putting it into play.
Yeah.
But that's something we'll do in due course.
And this is our story?
Well, yeah, I guess it is. This is our story. Good. All right, then.
Thank you so much for listening to the Journal of a Marketing Agency.
Please rate, like and subscribe and catch up with past and future episodes at playfairmarketing.com.